Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. This is Maryam Lemu, and with me is my husband.
Sayyid Sulaiman Takuma, Assalamu alaikum. I just want to pick up where we left off. After the investigations were done, the istihara was done by both families, because I told my father that Sheikh had gotten about 3 more people in addition to Hajia Aisha Lemu, and Nuruddin Lemu and himself to embark on istihara, seeking Allah's guidance if this union is the best for both of us and our families and the ummah. My father also had people he respected, himself and myself, and in our case we embarked on a 3-day fasting and then did the istihara. Everybody was happy with it except one person. Sheikh Ahmed Lemu was not immediately convinced that I was the best person for his daughter. It took about almost 3 months. And then he said it was in Haram, in the Kaaba, that Allah showed him that I was Maryam's correct partner. And it was upon his return from Umrah that he gave his blessings. So a wedding date was set and we got married on the 27th of September, 1991. Which would make it 29 years, September 2020, inshallah. And with all my preparations, because one of the things I did during the courtship is basically to say, Saeed, you have skeletons in your cupboard. You need to clear those skeletons to be able to be the best husband you can be for Maryam. So there was a lot of introspection. There was a lot of going into the self, a journey into the self, journey of discovery. And what I had to confront were a lot of what I considered my weaknesses that would become problematic for me as a husband. And I thought, in all honesty, that the time that I had, with all the introspection I've done, that I figured it out and I found the answers to all those questions until we got married and moved to the States. And within 2 weeks, Maryam asked me for a divorce. And I was like, what? Many of you have heard this story, but I was shocked. And I was like, no, this is not going to happen. I have done all the introspection, all the self-analysis, all the self-criticism that I needed to do to be what I thought was the perfect husband. I think even in that attitude of mine, there was an element of arrogance. And we started having problems. The first fight, very simple. I worked very hard, and among the dowry that was put together, I got a very expensive watch. Of course, it was waterproof and everything, but Maryam would do everything with the watch. She would do the dishes. She would, even go to the shower with the dishes and with the watch on her hand. And I was like, wait! I suffered to buy that watch. Can't you just respect the watch? Take it off, put it down before you go into the shower or do the dishes.
And I told him, my mother slept
in my family.
Watch. Yes, in my family, we all sleep with watches. We use watches all the time.
And believe you me, ladies and gentlemen, that is the beginning when you start setting the rules based on how you were raised. Yeah. You are setting up your own home with new rules. But when you say, in my house, which I had an attitude, and she said, well, in my house. And here we were, 2 stubborn people. I'm the eldest of the family, very pampered, kind of privileged. She was the baby of the family, kind of spoiled, also privileged. And man, did we clash.
But I wasn't as stubborn as he was, though.
Okay, we won't argue on that point, but let's go. That was the beginning. That was where we just were not, here we were really madly in love with each other. But these experiences, which was what I said in the first episode, that we are the sum of our experiences, kept rearing their ugly heads in the home that we were trying to create. And I wasn't able to say, you didn't cover this area. And I think that was the problem. I covered a lot about myself, but never thought about what those experiences were doing to me and what it was doing to her. And it went on. Now, that particular problem, the fights. We were in love, but we have fights. We're in love, we have fights. And I said, Maryam, I don't think it is the right atmosphere to bring a child into the world. And I said, I need to go back again and look into myself. Am I ready to be a good father? And are you ready to be a good mother? Do we understand the sacrifices that are necessary to bring a child into this world and not make them victims of the problems between the two of us? So we agreed to really look into that. It took me 3 years to be ready to be a father. Yeah. When I told Maryam, I think I'm ready, and she said, I'm ready, and I said, I don't think so. Well, to cut a long story short, it took the two of us 6 years. Yeah. With all the pressure we were getting, I was getting pressure from my late father, I was getting pressure from my mother. At first, I told them she was too young. Now, then my father gave me like a couple of years and said, isn't she old enough now? I'm like, oh my goodness. I had to come up with a line, and it was true. I told my father it wasn't Allah's time for us to become parents, because we're not having this child for anybody. Exactly. We're not having the child for my parents. We're not having the child for her parents. Nobody should pressure you into having a child, because ultimately you are the ones that Allah will hold accountable for how you raise the child. And if you're not ready to be a proper parent, to be the best parent you can be, children should not be experiments.
Absolutely.
You should be prepared to be parents. I don't know what you want to say about that.
Yeah, no, I think several things, though I will go back a bit, rewind, before we got to where we started having children. The fights, obviously I've shared this in lectures, but the big surprise came from the fact that I never saw my parents fight, and so I didn't know that you fight as a couple. And with all the high expectations of going into marriage, which is why a lot of marriages fail early on. The disappointment, because you've got expectations, you've got fantasies, you've got things you've read in romance novels. For a lot of women, a lot of girls, those are the things they expect will happen in the marriage. As now it's Z world. I think we even got, somebody wrote a letter to us and was wanting counseling, and like, how can I get my husband to be as romantic as those people
in Bollywood? In Bollywood,
yes. And I was like, that is fake. It's just actors. Yeah. I've been to India. That's not how they live. That's not how they relate. They don't go around into parks and start singing and dancing. That is all fiction and fantasies of what they hope their own real life would be. So I went with fantasies and expectations, and I hit the ground and hit my face hard on the ground, because it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. And what my parents had was what I thought, my perception. Many of us look at other couples and we think they have perfect marriages, and we want that. However, that is what they choose to show to the world. And you don't know the behind the scenes. For those marriages that are thriving, you don't know what they did to get there. The hard work, the blood that was shed. Saeed and I fought bad fights, and we'll be talking about that inshallah during the next episode. However, how we moved from the disappointment, the toxicity, the decision not to bring a child into the world where there is no love, there is no affection, there is no empathy, there's no emotional intelligence and care for one another, would not be fair, because we so wanted to be deliberate parents. We wanted to make sure that our children saw in us what we want them to be as parents themselves, because we often replicate what we see in our homes. But I think, yes, like Saeed said, it took us 6 years. For me, I knew I wasn't ready. I was still growing, still learning spiritually. I was lost. I didn't have focus. I didn't feel Allah's presence in my life. And I felt, how will I teach what I don't have? And that is so important as parents, that you need to get yourself in order before you can get others in order. Before you can be a parent, you need to be a model. You really have to have your act together. And that is something that, inshallah, as we go into the next episode, we'll talk about something that I know a lot of you are waiting to hear, which is, how did we go from the fights, which took about 6 years, to what we have today, inshallah. So I hope you will join us for that. Looking forward to having you.
Looking forward to that, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.